YouTube channel for the wide nation of sports by Hunter Tickle. Hit that subscribe button. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Wide Nation of Sports. We got another interview for you here on tap. We got a great guest today. He's the reporter he covers the Arkansas Razorbacks athletics for Hog Sports Network. He's a former U of E beat writer as well as USI beat writer. Southern Indiana and University of Evansville for the Evansville Courier and Press. And yeah, guys, we got a legend for this one. I'm really pumped to get him in here. His name's Anthony Kristensen. Ladies and gents, how we doing, my guy?
Doing well, doing well. Excited to chat some hoops. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you. Really appreciate you coming on here, giving some love to a guy who's kind of transitioned out of the game, but came across you during my time in the Valley covering the Sycamores, and you did a stand-up job as well covering the Aces. So really appreciate it.
Much
An
appreciated. Yeah.
Anthony, I wanted to kind of, I guess, start here. So the Razorbacks, we're gonna go right into it. It's your beat. You're covering the hoop squad there. Obviously a gauntlet of a conference right now. The SEC this year, uh, easily regarded as like the best conference in all of college basketball right now. The Razorbacks have lost six of their last seven though, after a really strong non-conference season, where they were ranked a lot of that time too. And then yeah, you had the Razorbacks have their worst start in conference since 85-86 season. Um, can you kind of break down how they got there and what you've seen on the beat so far?
Yeah. So they struggled a lot with their physicality at first. The SEC obviously a very physical league, and that's something John Calipari kind of pointed to in that or after that final non-conference game against Oakland. He was asked about if he felt Arkansas was in a place to be ready for the physicality that the SEC has, and he was pretty blunt about it and said he didn't think they were ready for it. And I thought that was that was evidenced kind of by the start, just because you get Tennessee right out of the gate, and Tennessee out rebounds them. I think it was 52-29 or something like that. Gets to the line and everything along those lines, and you kind of see that trend continue up until that Georgia game where they're the more physical team against Georgia and they get a win in that one. So that's kind of been the big, I guess, thing that you're looking at, right out of the gate in SEC play.
Mhm.
They haven't shot the ball as well as you would hope. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. Sometimes they struggle there at the rim as well. I remember against Florida, they went 2 for 16 against layups, and that became I asked John Calipari about it afterward, and he was like, 2 for 16? It was that? And I was like, yep. And he was like, no, it wasn't. And I was like, okay. Because I didn't really know how to respond. Uh, but yes, they've struggled in some of those regards. Defensively, they struggle in pick and roll actions. They struggle guarding the 3-point line. So they've just kind of, I guess, struggled in year one under John Calipari. It's You can see kind of in moments they put it all together. You look at that Michigan game at
hmm
Madison Square Garden. They come out and they win that. They came out and beat Georgia. Yeah, it was an ugly game, but sometimes that you got to win those games. So there have been points and times where you can see it. You can see that they have the potential to win these kinds of games. It's just they haven't put it together that much in SEC play, obviously.
Yeah, you mentioned making threes, defending the three. I mean, it's paramount now in today's world of basketball, college basketball, NBA, both those levels. Um, the Razorbacks, they got a net. I believe yesterday I looked, it was at 57. You mentioned that win in December against Michigan, which is going to be huge down the stretch if they can maybe sneak into that bubble picture. Um, what would you say? Would you put it at a number? Like how many wins they got to get in the SEC down this, last 11 games here to kind of make some noise and kind of get some interest for potentially getting into the field?
I think, and this is John Calipari's words. He said if a team finishes 7-11 in the SEC and has a win over Michigan, they should be in.
Yeah.
So wonder who he was talking about. Um, But I think that's probably the number you want to get to, just because I mean, obviously the SEC has all these quad one, quad two games. You're not going to play a
Hmm.
game outside quad two in the SEC. I think um, if memory serves me correctly, I think that's what it is. So I mean, they're going to have the opportunities to do it. It's just right now, it just doesn't look likely.
Right.
Just when you look at I mean, how much they've struggled against higher level teams. I think they're three and uh, 3-8
Okay.
against top 100 teams on KenPom, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And one of those wins is Lipscomb. So and that's no disrespect to Lipscomb. Money Acuffs does a great job there, ASUN favorite, all of that. It's just when you're Arkansas and you want to be in that tournament conversation, you need more than Lipscomb on your resume,
Right.
right? So that's kind of the big area that's kind of a struggle in non-conference play. I mean, that Michigan game is carrying a lot of their water right now.
Yep.
Um, just because I mean that is their best win, and then their
Yep.
next best win is Georgia, and then Lipscomb.
Yep.
So you you have the opportunities in SEC play just because of how deep the league is and how strong it is, and how strong the league performed in non-conference play. It's just you need to find those wins, right?
Yeah.
So that's that's kind of where it is. So if they finish 7-11 in the SEC play, which doesn't look likely at the moment, given they're 1-6, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken, uh, it's obviously going to be tough to get that point. But if they can, finish 7-11, I mean that's six more good
Hmm.
wins. That'll put them on the bubble. But then you look at some of their losses. I mean, LSU, Oklahoma, not to say either of those are bad teams.
Hmm.
It's just those are games that if you want to be on the right side of the bubble, those are games you probably have to win.
Right.
Uh, so it's an interesting dynamic, but I think 7-11 puts them at least somewhere in the conversation. But 7-11 at the moment
Puts them in the
doesn't
conversation
look
and
yeah
also probably caps a remarkable turnaround to the season
yeah
and the
yeah
trajectory where
yeah.
everything's going right now for sure. What
Mm-hmm.
so that it starts with a trip for John Calipari going to his old stomping grounds, Rupp Arena, to play at his old school that he was there for I believe a decade.
Decade
What
and a
can
half,
you tell
yeah.
me about kind of maybe some of the noise around Fayetteville right now as they get ready for this game right now?
The noise in Fayetteville is not feeling too good at the moment, just because of the way they've started SEC play, and you know, in Lexington they seem really excited about having Mark Pope and just the way they've started the season, but they're also on a two-game losing streak right now, and that
Hmm.
could be three depending on what happens tonight at Tennessee. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but depending on what happens at Tennessee, it could be a three-game losing streak. So you could have two teams that are kind of in the middle of tough stretches coming up on Saturday. So that'll be an interesting one to see if that is indeed the case, depending on what happens tonight in Knoxville. But obviously, when you get a guy like John Calipari to coach your team, people are going to be excited. He's a Hall of Fame coach. He's won a national championship and did however many Final Fours, and that's obviously going to generate some buzz, and people were very excited, and I think rightly so when you get a guy with that kind
Does
of
he get a good
pedigree.
reception though here going back to Kentucky? What do you think of them receiving him in Kentucky and what it looks like?
I would think so. I would think he'll get a good reception. I mean, he was there for 15 years, won a national championship, went to some Final Fours, and even beyond basketball. I mean, whenever there was like natural disasters that hit Kentucky, he was out trying to help people out and raising money for charities and everything. So you would think he'll get a nice reception.
Hmm.
I know, Twitter is loud and whatever, but I like to remember, Twitter's not the real world, and that is that. But
Yeah,
I would think he'll probably get a good reception for sure.
yeah. How do you gauge so far early on with John Calipari, in his first year in Fayetteville? Like, would you gauge that it's been kind of a hot cold and like we really don't even have a kind of a true gauge of like how it's gone so far for the Razorbacks in year one?
Yeah, I think when you look at the non-conference schedule, especially after they beat Michigan, people were like, okay, yeah, he's here, this team is here.
Hmm.
They're getting rolling, and then so people very excited at that point, and then now it's very different. So I guess it is kind of a hot and cold. kind of, I guess, swing, and maybe that's to be expected for a lot of year one coaches. I mean, obviously there's some exceptions. You look at obviously Mark Pope at Kentucky, or Mark Byington there at Vanderbilt, or Darren DeVries at West Virginia. There's going to be some exceptions to that. And then, I mean, maybe you expect the Arkansas to be better. I personally did. I
Hmm.
thought they were going to be better than they are, especially when you have you know three guys from last season's Kentucky team follow John Calipari to Arkansas, and then three of the freshman class that he signed there followed him to Arkansas, and then he brought
Hmm.
most of that staff with him to Arkansas. So it's an interesting kind of case study because it's not necessarily the same as Mark Pope, the only player who played for him prior to going to Kentucky is Jackson Robinson,
Right.
or
That's
Darren
true.
DeVries, brought Tucker DeVries, but he's out right now, and
Hmm.
then he brought some other Missouri Valley guys, but nobody who had played for him in the past, unless I'm forgetting somebody, which is possible.
No, yeah, I
So
agree. Yeah, yeah.
it's an interesting case study, but yeah, I would say it would fall under the hot and cold kind of I guess definition right now. And right now, it's definitely more cold than it is hot.
And then Anthony, I want to hear from your vantage point. So, you covered the Ohio Valley Conference, you covered the Missouri Valley Conference. I know you covered Missouri. Was that SEC when you were undergrad there? They've switched so
Yes,
much.
yeah,
So it was SEC. So you've definitely been around some different styles and college basketball levels. Mid-major. Now you're obviously, like we said, this conference right now, SEC is blowing it out of the water this year, just based off their resume they built with all their wins in non-conference and then what they're doing now in conference. Like, can you kind of give me a feel for like what it is walking into some of these arenas right now and just like the level of play that you're kind of getting to witness firsthand as you're on this beat?
yeah. I mean, it's awesome, right? I mean, you go from, I mean, no disrespect, but like sometimes when you go to like Eastern Illinois, for example, no disrespect to the Panthers or anything, but that atmosphere is not going to compare to Tennessee on opening night of SEC play. It's a little bit different. And like I said, I don't want to disrespect Eastern Illinois. I enjoyed my trip up there when I was covering USI and all of that, but it's a different level, right? So I mean, people are excited about SEC hoops just from all the places I've been. I mean, LSU wasn't a packed house by any means, but people were excited about that team. It was LSU's first SEC win that night, so the atmosphere, while it wasn't a full arena, it was still a good atmosphere. And then you go to a place like Missouri, my undergrad, which was kind of a fun personal trip. But then, that's a Missouri team that's undergoing one of the best year to year turnarounds in the country
Hmm.
right now, going from 0-19 to in SEC play to now being ranked in the top 20 in the eight people.
Hmm.
So people are excited there. I mean, that game had an awesome environment. Tennessee was incredible. So you go to some of these games and people are excited. I'm excited to be at these these awesome environments and everything. And you get that and like I covered some great environments in the mid-major realms there. Indiana State, Holman Center going can get real loud at however many different points. Bradley, Peoria at Carver Arena is awesome.
Hmm.
Belmont was fun. There's a lot of great environments, and I'm just extremely fortunate and blessed to be able to experience that. And now that I'm doing it in the SEC level, it's with the season the SEC is having as well. That adds into it. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to do that, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, like the last couple of years for me on the beat with the Sycamores, it was like a lot of one or two or maybe three reporters in the room for after games at the press conference. Um, I do remember the last year I went to Cambridge. Indiana State was playing Ball State. Wasn't like a huge fanfare, but the nightcap was like billed as the game of the year. You had
Mhm.
Arizona versus Purdue when they were both, I believe, top five. And that was cool. I mean, that was something that I hadn't seen where you had all those, media members lined up, photographers, TV, print, and everyone's just stacked in there, right? Everyone's either standing in the corner or if you got a seat, everyone's just packed in there, like jam packed. Anything you can say has been different with it being more of a national and a high profile beat that you're covering right now?
Yeah, so it is. there's more national appeal just because it's the SEC, and then John Calipari comes in and he's his own brand, I guess. So he brings a lot of that. Like I remember his introductory press conference. I got there like as soon as the doors opened, so I could get into the media room and put some stuff down on the seat I wanted, so I could be in the front row and get to ask some questions and all of that. So I wouldn't say I'm doing anything necessarily different.
Hmm.
It's just there's more people asking questions, and yeah, I'm trying to navigate those waters, going from being the guy on the beat to a guy on the beat.
Hmm.
So it's been an interesting one to navigate. I'm really enjoying it. I've become good friends with I guess quote unquote competitors
Hmm.
on the beat, which is always a fun part of journalism and all of that. And then I mean, just trying to the big thing I've been trying to do in being on this big of a beat has been just I guess trying to make my coverage different to make
Hmm.
sure that I'm doing things other people aren't doing, trying to get people to see like, okay, this is this is how I'm covering the team versus this is how they're covering this person's covering the team or this person's covering the team. Just kind of being trying to bring something different, something unique. Am I doing a good job with that? I'll let my bosses decide. Um,
Right.
so yeah, so it's certainly been a lot of fun. I've loved living in Northwest Arkansas. It's been great. I've made a lot of great friends just in my short time there, and just a couple of days away from it being a year, which is kind of crazy to say,
Nice.
but it's been a lot of fun.
And I'm right there with you, man. It was always about shaping your stories in a different way, layering it, declaring it, like finding a different angle that no one else is finding. And I know you were doing a lot of that with the Courier and Press in Evansville as well. So shout out to them.
Yeah.
Uh, but what can you say, man? When you look at your year in Fayetteville, any favorite story to track or to write about since you've been there?
Ooh, okay. So my favorite story I've probably written to this point is probably about the Tusk, the live mascot that they have, the Razorback that they bring to all the football games. Uh, his original handler passed away last year, and there was kind of a bit of an unknown around whether or not the program, the live mascot program, would continue or how it would
Mhm.
continue. And I've kind of chronicled that because his family's kind of picked up after him and kind of carried it on in his name and his legacy, and just kind of telling that story, just kind of how they're keeping that alive and all of that. That's probably my favorite one that I've written so far. Yeah, that was yeah, and then that's my favorite one that I've written to this point since I
I
moved
like
out
it.
over
I
there.
like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I've never written about a mascot, and it sounds like you got right there when it was a turning point for what they were doing with the mascot in terms of
Mhm.
finding a new one and keeping it going.
Mhm.
What about what's the biggest name you've run into or kind of talked to since you got there?
Just in terms of coverage, or
It could be an actor, it could be a celebrity, it could be an athlete, it could be a coach. Who you got?
well, I mean, if that's the criteria, it's got to be John Calipari, right?
Okay.
Like, just with him being, a Hall of Fame coach, having accomplished all he's accomplished and everything like that. And I guess even, some added scrutiny to the team just because,
Hmm.
when he comes, he's going to bring a lot more attention, if that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh, I got to talk to Eric Musselman a couple times before he obviously moved to USC. So that was
That
that
was
was
your guy, right?
cool.
That was your favorite guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he was interesting. I don't know if he ever because I never actually got to like formally introduce myself to him, so that was
Hmm.
that kind of a little bit of a regret.
Yeah.
And then
That is a question I
obviously I
have for you,
came here.
Anthony. So like with Calipari, do you get like sit downs with him one on one for 20
Oh
minutes or
no.
how does that look? Like how is that interaction like with you guys?
So since I've traveled for all the games to this point, I think he knows my face at least. I don't know that he knows my name, but he and I see. I think we have a good rapport. I think he respects my questions.
Okay.
I hope so, at least.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't gotten to like sit down with him. I mean, I've introduced myself. We've shook hands and everything like
Hmm.
that. Which I unfortunately just never got the chance to do with Eric Musselman, just because I got there so late in the season. It was a bad season, so he didn't really want to stick around and just chat much.
Right.
So and then pretty soon in the off season, he was in Southern California, so I didn't get to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, never got the chance to introduce myself to him. But I know when things were rolling, he was apparently a lot of fun to cover.
Hmm.
And then I don't think anybody has a great time when they're covering teams that struggle. So that's I guess just part of it. But
Yep.
yeah, so yeah, John Calipari is probably the answer, and I think he's. I think we're getting there. We're getting there. I haven't gotten like a sit down one on one, but he knows my
Biding your time.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Well, Anthony, I saw you also covering the women's soccer team in Arkansas, which they were having like a historic year. Went up to number one at one point in the polls. Got to the third round of the NCAA tournament. You're a soccer guy. I'm a soccer guy. What can you tell me about how big, SEC soccer is down there in the South?
it's big, man. Especially when you look at the resources that a lot of teams are putting into women's soccer. There's no SEC men's soccer aside from Kentucky and South Carolina, and obviously they don't play in the SEC for men's soccer because there
Hmm.
doesn't the league doesn't sponsor it. But women's soccer, I mean, a lot of teams are putting a lot of resources into it, which is cool to see. I mean, you look at the facilities that a lot of these teams have are really really nice. I know Arkansas has put some money into its facility, just put down a new natural grass field. I think last year or 2 years ago. It was before I arrived, so
Hmm.
there's that. But I mean, SEC soccer is big. I mean, you look at Arkansas was ranked number one. At one point this year, I think Mississippi State cracked number one in one of the polls at one point.
Hmm.
I'm not in soccer mode, so I'm I'm trying to jog my own memory. But it's big, it's fun. There's a lot of really good teams in the SEC, Arkansas included. There's a lot of really good coaches, a lot of really good players, and yeah, there's a lot to like in terms of SEC soccer for sure.
And then I just looked at CBS Sports yesterday. I think it was Jerry Palm does the bracketology on there. He had 13 SEC teams in the field right now. So obviously the bubble team would be last four and was Texas. And then you have 12 others, which is a monster of a conference. So let's go ahead and put it at 12 and a half. If you have 12 and a half, are you going under or over that for teams making the SEC field? No one in
I'm
particular,
gonna
but just 12 and a half.
I'm gonna go under. I think it's probably going to be 11 or 12,
Okay.
just because I mean the teams are going to beat up on each other so much that naturally there's going to be teams that fall down and just frankly, I guess, lose too many games to really get in. Um, I mean, you look at a team like LSU, for example. I mean, they beat some decent teams in the non-conference schedule, and then they've struggled in league play. So I know LSU is not a team that's getting tournament love or anything like that, but like
Yeah.
a team like say Texas, for example, Texas is coming off two wins in a row against Missouri and Texas A&M, two big wins, both at home. But if they like say go on the road and struggle, and I don't know who Texas plays next, but if Texas drops 3 or 4 coming up or something like that, they fall out of the tournament picture or something like that, or Georgia who had a really good non-conference
Yep.
they if they keep losing games, especially losing to an Arkansas team that struggled a lot, that's in league play, that's a bad loss. So I mean, maybe they kind of slipped down. Oklahoma, after going undefeated in conference play, struggled to gain its footing in SEC play. So I think that there's going to be teams that just beat up on each other to an extent that it kind of opens up this, I guess, I don't want to say bottom tier, but I guess
Yep.
that's the only way to say it. Bottom
Yep.
tier that doesn't end up in the tournament. So I'll take the under on 12 and a half.
Under. And then if you have, there could be multiple teams in the SEC very easily make the Final Four, but Let's go. One team from the SEC makes the Final Four. Who you got?
Oh, Auburn. Has to be
Easy, huh?
Auburn. I
Easy.
mean,
That
yeah.
easy?
Yes, I mean, you look at that Auburn team, just how complete it is. With even with when Janai Broome was out, I mean, they're still kind of kicking the crap out of everybody that played. And then Janai Broome comes back, and in his first game, he's got 16 and 13 and beats Tennessee in kind of a game that was a rock fight. But I mean, Auburn, I think, is the most complete team. I mean, you don't want to rule out teams like Florida, who have been awesome. Uh, you know, despite some very serious things happening on that coaching staff, or allegedly happening on the coaching staff, I should say.
Yep.
Then you have a team like Alabama who went there last year and still has a lot of those pieces, a lot of those players from last year. If Mark Sears can turn it on, they could easily make it again.
Right.
And then, I mean, there's coaches who have Final Four experience, down the line. I mean, Ole Miss, Chris
Mhm.
Beard, he's coached in a national championship game in the past. What say what you will, if you think he should be coaching still with
Yeah.
the arrest and whatnot, but
Right.
that is that. But this it's a loaded league, so you have a lot of contenders. I mean, you even look at a team like Missouri who can get out and play at a pace and get a lead on anybody. I think that was one of the things I said leading into that game. Like, if you start slow and let Missouri get on top, it's going to be really hard to get back into a game like that. And not to say that Missouri's going to go to a Final Four or anything, but I'm just checking. You look down the line and you can make a case for a lot of teams. But if I'm
Yeah, and
if I'm
then
picking one, I'm
Rick
saying
Barnes
Auburn.
getting there in '03 with
Yes, yeah,
with Texas. Now they're at
yeah.
Tennessee.
I don't know how I mentioned
It's
Tennessee.
too
Yeah,
stacked, man.
there's
It's
just
too
there's too
much of a
many teams.
gauntlet,
Yeah,
man. There's literally like five, six teams you think might just potentially have that Final Four potential. It's nuts. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, man.
Jazz Lanier, spectacular.
Yeah, it's insane. You're gonna be going to Nashville, right, for that conference tournament?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's the plan.
that's gonna be a fun time, man. I guess if you get to like, the final 12, you're going to the tournament. If you get
Yeah.
to the, second round or quarterfinals, you're a lock. So,
Mhm.
well, yeah, man. It's been great to have you out here. I really appreciate it, man. Really love having you out here on the show. Once again, ladies and gents, that's Anthony Kristensen. He's a reporter, beat reporter covering the Arkansas Razorbacks for Hog Sports Network, and he's a former UE and USI beat writer for the Evansville Courier and Press. Anthony, it's been great, man. Enjoy the beat, live it up, and we'll get you on here again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.